called as responsible AI. So when I'm saying responsible AI, this is mainly consists of a framework of some of the important practices in machine learning development. And these in today's context become more and more responsible, more and more important to know about what is it that when we are using machine learning, when we are using deep learning and overall artificial intelligence, what are the things that should be considered before we get into the development of these technologies. I would be talking mainly about why we need responsible AI, what are the main pillars of responsible AI, and where are we in the current implementation in industries. So what are the practices that are being followed up when these systems, AI systems are getting developed in industry. Let us first, before we get into this responsible AI, quickly glance through what is artificial intelligence, just to revise and reiterate the definitions. That artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, right? Why we suddenly started thinking or getting so much buzz about these words? Thanks to the advancement of higher computing technologies that are available to our perusal now, the storage has become more affordable. There is availability of high internet speed, which we can all access with very affordable prices. Especially along with these three things, because of these three reasons, now the data has become big data and it is available to us in abundance. Now, with these advancement in technologies and things available to us, there comes a challenge. And then to solve some of these problems using these technologies, advanced algorithms have been developed using deep learning, machine learning, etc. So today, when I'm going to talk or use the term artificial intelligence, it might be machine learning or application of deep learning or usage of either one of them in particular, but I'll be using a common terminology called as AI, as an other two are subfields of AI. So what is artificial intelligence? A program that can be sensing, reasoning, acting, and adapting based on the inputs received from human in the loop. The algorithms are able to adapt and perform at a level where a human cannot. So a rigorous, continuous job that a human would get tired or may make human mistakes are very easy by these machines to perform and perform with accuracy. As the science fiction novels and these Hollywood movies, right, depict the artificial intelligence as some kind of a robot that is going to take over the world, right? But I feel the recent evolution in AI is far from this, and we are yet to reach that level of intelligence, as we call it as human intelligence in artificial intelligence techniques. But still, artificial intelligence has shown us tremendous expansion in terms of where all it can be used, where all it can be used for day-to-day life, in banking, rather in business, industry. And some of these technologies are now used mainly for the life, to make the life easy and make it social good, right? So I would like to stress upon some of these applications that are available. Maybe many of this you are using in your day-to-day life. So apart from what I'm showing on the screen, I would like to just take example of the mobile phones that we are using, right? So in the mobile phones, we have these AI models placed in our machines, in our small mobile pocket machines. These are helping us in organizing our photos automatically. Earlier, we used to categorize our albums and galleries manually, but now we see that there are a lot of tags comes up, whether it is a scenery or a birthday party, or it's a outside scene, mountains. What is it that it is getting categorized automatically? So this is all because of the image classification models that they have built on top of the photos or images. Similarly, that email organization, whether it is a spam or a promotional event or it's a priority email, that mailbox is getting designed automatically. Some of them are being used in the security, the way they are handling cybersecurity, etc. But the recent advancements are going to get more and more prominent in our daily life. And the recent latest trends like in healthcare, the drug discovery and personalized medicine. These are very wonderful applications that the researchers are working on all over the world. These applications are going to make usage of some of this siloed data, right? So all the patient data, assume that in COVID situation, if we would have had a common model to understand each patient's behavior and symptoms, root causes, it would have been very easier for us to actually see the results outcome faster. So in all, we have a very wide applications to us of artificial intelligence in day-to-day life. But with this advancement, evolution, and so much of progress that is happening in this AI field, there is a risk that is coming up. What is the risk? I would actually want you all to go through a quick video, which I'm going to play. It's 2-minute video that I'm going to play from the YouTube. Let me know once it is visible as well as audible.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone.
So can anyone please confirm if it is audible and visible?
Audible.
Okay.
One is saying anything at any point in time.
Jordan Peele created this fake video of President Obama to demonstrate how easy it is to put words in someone else's mouth.
Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet.
Not everyone bought it, but the technology behind such frauds is rapidly improving, even as worries increase about their potential for harm. This is your Bloomberg Quick Take on deepfakes. Deepfakes, or realistic-looking fake videos and audio, gained popularity as a means of adding famous actresses into porn scenes. Despite bans on major websites, they remain easy to make and find. They're named for the deep learning artificial intelligence algorithms that make them possible. Input real audio or video of a specific person, the more the better, and the software tries to recognize patterns in speech and movement. Introduce a new element like someone else's face or voice, and a deepfake is born.
It's actually extremely easy to make one of these things. There were just some supposed, breakthroughs from academic researchers who work with this particular kind of machine learning in the past few weeks, which would drastically reduce the amount of video you need actually to create one of these.
Programs like FakeApp, the most popular and widely available for making deep fakes, need dozens of hours of human assistance to create a video that looks like this rather than this. In August, researchers at Carnegie Mellon revealed software that accurately rendered not just facial features, but changing weather patterns and flowers in bloom. This advance is not yet available to the public. But with increasing capability comes increasing concern.
This is kind of fake news on steroids, potentially. We do not know of a case yet where someone has tried to use this to perpetrate a kind of fraud or an information warfare campaign, or for that matter, to really damage someone's reputation. But it's the danger that everyone is really afraid of.
In a world where fakes are easy to create, authenticity also becomes easier to deny. People caught doing genuinely objectionable things could claim evidence against them is bogus. Fake videos can also be difficult to detect, though researchers around the world and at the US Department of Defense have said they're working on ways to counter them. Deep fakes do, however, have some positive uses. Take Cereproc, a firm that creates digital voices for people who lose theirs from disease.
Speech synthesis is the artificial production of human speech.
There are also applications that could be considered either good or bad, like the many, many deepfakes that exist solely to turn as many movies as possible into Nicolas Cage movies.
Oh, hi, Mark.
So this video I purposefully chosen, maybe you can do and watch more such videos just to sensitize the student community how it is very important to be responsible while using the artificial intelligence. As the faces that I'm throwing on the screen are, none of it is actual face, is all generated by deep learning image processing techniques. These are auto-generative models using those deep feature and deep neural networks. Such images are becoming very easy to create. And this is going to create some kind of ethical concerns in our society. Not only this, there are many other kind of ethical challenges that face difficulties in adoption of AI for further usage in our day-to-day life. Like some of these examples, as I just mentioned, one about deepfakes that we have seen in the video. There are few systems that are developed by even these big players, big companies like Microsoft, Amazon. And while using and deploying these machines, they realize that how difficult it is becoming day by day ethically to use AI for general usage. Assume that now we all know that driverless cars are coming up. And when these driverless cars are coming up, the concerns, right? We all know it is going to remove the human error in loop with all sorts of sensors and cameras in place. Many of the accidents can get reduced drastically. But at the same time, since we are far from the human level intelligence, the moral dilemmas that may come in front of a driverless car would be very difficult to actually measure and see. And in those situations, it becomes very difficult who to make accountable for. Similarly, when many of us are very comfortable talking to these chatbots and conversational bots, and since we understand the technology in a much better way, but some of our elderly people who doesn't so acquainted with the technology, when they are talking to these chatbots and conversational bots, it's impersonalizing and personality on the screen or while talking to it. So it becomes ethically concerned whether it is right or wrong. Let us move. So I just mentioned that there are some ethical concerns that are present there as an usage of artificial intelligence. But then every problem has some solution to it. So what are the solutions? So I kind of categorize these in two kinds of possible solution that we should adapt based on the kind of impact that it creates on the society. One is the system impact, or rather the system implication and the social implication. When I am saying system versus social, there are based on direct impact or indirect impact on the humans. Assume that the first category which I am talking about, due to the specific AI systems being used, there are some concerns that can be avoided by taking system consideration while developing these AI techniques, like the privacy concerns during the data collection process, recommendations that become unfair unwillingly, some kind of discrimination against race, gender, ethnicity. It should have some kind of clear accountability in the system and transparency at the same time. So that is what we call fairness in the AI systems. At the same time, there could be some indirect impact, right? With this evolution or much of automation, it may lead to some loss of jobs. People may have some ethical concerns due to deepfakes. Threat to social harmony may come. And for this, we need to take some of this social angles into place. And to avoid this situation, we need clear principles of responsible AI. That is what I'm going to talk in some time now. The social implications require us to identify some of these possible policy and government recommendations and impose these structures by some incentive mechanism so that people become more aware and they adopt this responsible AI practices while developing the systems. Now, what are we doing in India? So recently, when I had just looked around that what is it that India is doing about it, in particular, we being Indians, I got a feed in my LinkedIn feed. That feed was from Honorable Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad, who is Minister of Law, Justice and Communication. And he posted this clipping that I'm showing on the screen. And he mentioned there, sharing my article in today's Hindustan Times on how India is committed to use of artificial intelligence for common good while addressing privacy and ethical concerns of users. And that is what he opened up this biggest summit that is happening currently in India, which is called as RAISE 2020. This is just got completed in this last week itself, where even PM Modi has addressed the inaugural session, right? This clearly tells that we at India is also committed to create awareness and make citizens more responsible. Earlier in the year, government has launched this program called as Responsible AI for Youth. Overall, 1,100 students from schools completed this basic awareness course and now building and using their AI projects with these practices in place. Also, India has joined this global partnership on artificial intelligence, along with these other big countries like United Kingdom, US, Canada, France, etc., for the joint development, which is called as responsible development and use of AI. So, as far as social concerns are concerned, government and regulatory authorities are going to take care of it. What, as an engineer and as a developer of the system and the user of the system, maybe the CEOs and those big people who are owning the startup companies, we have a responsibility is more on the system side. So what are these implications that we see on the system side? Let us have few more detailed example case by case in order to understand the need of it. So what I'm showing on the screen is an example, which is a binary image classifier, which is actually used for classifying a husky and a wolf. Now there were two classifier models being used, classifier 1 and classifier 2. The classifier 1 was actually able to classify husky as husky based on the environment surroundings, right? So you can see that there is snow in the surroundings, and classifier 1 is using those features based on the surroundings of snow and classifying it correctly. Whereas classifier 2 in particular is classifying it as husky based on some of these features, the nose and those artificial features that are mapped to the facial structure, maybe the skin texture, etc., are used in classifier 2. So like this, when we know what is it that the AI system has used, what are the kind of features and what is the explanation that is available, it is required not only the accuracy in the AI models, that is what we are looking at, but this responsible AI thing starts from post we have achieved some kind of accuracy. So understanding in AI system is a must-have requirement. Next consideration that should be taken care of is explainability in the AI system. Just see the example that I've kept here. The example says that IBM has actually failed to deploy a healthcare system that they have developed based on AI systems. And this is basically post their success on Jeopardy. It was a challenge that the IBM Watson team has won for the chatbots. So their expertise in natural language processing has made them create a system which was actually which has actually solved or achieved the human level response in a very humanic kind of conversation on the technology. And they were very elated with this success. And then the marketing team of the IBM Watson has decided to do a similar usage in the healthcare domain. And while creating this oncology based models, so all of you understand that how difficult it is to predict anything when it comes to oncology or the cancer models. They try to use their expertise in creating a model for oncology, but they couldn't explain when the accuracy was coming to the doctors that why that accuracy is coming and what are the reasons because of which this particular model is doing good. And hence they couldn't deploy. So the doctor or the team of doctors, they didn't agree to deploy that system in the for the usage. And all the research, they're still, I think, researching and maybe going ahead with what they are able to do. And the research is moving into some of those directions that we can add these explainability in the models that we are working with. The another consideration that we should be having is consistency across stakeholders. So this is what we call as fairness for all the users of the society, right? Fairness for all the users of society, meaning, as I was just mentioning, Amazon was using this or rather developing this recruitment tool to scrutinize the applications, and then based on their scrutiny, they were offering some of these jobs. what they found out, they were using this past data of 10 years, and they found out that system was actually rating male candidates better as the historical data was biased. So it was not with the purpose that they had trained a model that it shows bias against women, but it was unwillingly, unwantedly was there in the past 10 years historical data, because in our society, we see that the men's are paid more and they seen as more technically aware, right? So we need to have some system in place which conforms to some consistency across the stakeholders when the AI systems are developed. Now, this is one more example of bias in AI system. So this is a program that is actually was showing huge bias against blacks in US. And you can see the kind of risk score that has been associated with the black was 10 as compared to white person, where it was 3. And you can just see the kind of offenses that were recorded under them. But this is what is the basis of the historical data that the machine learning or the deep learning model has learned, and it predicted a odd against the blacks. Such are the biases and ethics issues that we need to consider while developing the AI systems. Now, the next consideration that I would like to highlight and make create the awareness about is accountability of AI decisions. So this is one such example. So these are all examples, and I'm flashing the sources of these examples that I'm talking about here. You can just go and have a look at it. Probably if not this one, maybe you can get many similar examples where similar situations might have arisen in past and actually forced people to think in this responsible AI directions. So in this particular example, what had happened is the investor has invested a big, huge sum amount of 20 million, and he has lost that investment based on the recommendation that was given by this AI system. Now, once they try to find out who should be made responsible for it or who should be made accountable for it, whether it was a mistake of a developer or a solutions architect or the marketer of the solution or the creator of it, or probably the end user himself, because when he was using, he should have taken care of the suggestions and recommendations are coming out of machine. So with this example, what we are able to see is while we are developing this accounting AI systems, we need to make these pillars very clear, that when something is happening, why it is happening, and what could be the root cause of it, so that any post hoc analysis, in case of any failure, we are able to figure it out. This is one of the last one that I'm going to stress upon, and I think this is the foremost important pillar, which is privacy and trust considerations while you develop any software systems. Like the example said, they use some of this genetics data of the patients to come up with some of these dosing informations for a particular kind of chemical that they were using in a medicine. Now, what the researchers have identified and found, once the system is processed, a user of that AI system, by associating some of the demographic information, which is nowadays very easily available by social media platforms, etc., can actually find the genetics biomarkers of a particular patient and can create cause, right? And for such system, they don't have to do a physical killing or a physical damage to the patient, but they can very easily know the biomarkers and do unethical thing if they are willing to do that. Similarly, a lot of privacy concerns are there when people don't tell you enough about when they are sharing or using their data without your considerations or consent. This creates an issue of right to privacy as an infringement on my right to privacy. So we need to be very aware about how are we taking care while developing our AI systems about privacy as well as security. There are many adversarial attacks that we are seeing, the cyber attacks we are seeing, and then security should also be taken care of. Now, with these examples that I talked about, we can come to a common consensus that we need as a creator of artificial intelligence. we have a duty to guide the development and applications of AI in ways that fit our social values, and it is inclusive of all. And while doing this, and when we plan to do and execute these things, we can easily come that we need to have the definition of responsible AI as it should consist of these primary pillars. So I'm calling them as in pillars of responsible AI. We can call them as in principles or basic building blocks or the practices that we need to follow while developing AI. So I'm naming them as reproducible, transparent, accountable, private, and secure. Under each of these hats, I have listed down that when I'm talking about reproducible AI, I'm talking of standardized ML ops, data and model catalogs to be maintained and made available for timely and time checking and going back to a particular model or a data point that back in time we can trace. So the full trace of the whole development process should be made available. Basically, this field has been actually originated in the research field, right? So some of these researchers, when they were submitting their papers for publications, it was found that if you submit your code along with the paper, it gets faster acceptance, right? Because people, the experts were able to run that code, confirm on your findings and accept the papers in the peer reviewed journals easily. But the reproducibility of these algorithms of due to various reasons, it could be stochastic nature of the algorithm, like randomness that is there, or maybe due to various other reasons, the results were not coming that the researcher or the examiner wanted to see based on the outcome that was shown to him. And hence, this whole field of reproducibility is come into effect. There are other reasons that I'll be talking about while I talk about the reference architecture. Next point is that's about transparency that I just spoke to. It should be interpretable models, not only the feature set, but the model itself should be explainable, should be interpretable, and it should be fair from all unwanted bias. So it should not have bias against any particular gender, race, ethnicity, etc. And we should have measures and matrices to make sure that we are doing it. The third pillar says AI system should be accountable. It should be policy driven. There should always be a human in the loop, because some of the things we see that the machines may drip from the systems, the way they've been created. And the human in the loop is the person who is going to take trap on those things. And these decisions should be driven by some specific matrices, and monitoring, strict monitoring should be made available. When it comes to privacy, a new term or a new framework called federated learning or privacy preserving machine learning and artificial intelligence has been coined by researchers, and it is a very active field of research currently. So the framework has been provided called as federated learning, wherein some of the machine learning models we are able to use. I'll be talking a bit more in detail in the next slide. And the last one, the most important thing, security. The data should be encrypted, things like PII informations, etc. Europe has GDPR, strict GDPR rules, and India is soon going to come with our own GDPR rules and regulations, and mostly will be able to secure or will be able to keep our privacy more into action. Similarly, adversarial testing should also be done before deployment in AI systems. So how our AI system is going to handle the adversarial attack that the cyber criminals or unethical hackers are going to may come up with. So let us talk quickly. Before I go on to the implementation, let me do a quick time check. Can you tell me how much time do I am left with?
Oh, ma'am, you have 20 minutes.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. So this is good. So let us now talk about where are we in terms of implementation. I had given enough justification, sanitization in terms of where are we, why we need these things, and then what is it that is required. But the current practices in industry says what? So we at Persistent, we give this reference architecture, and when we are developing our AI systems for our customers, we propose this reference architecture to our users. Let me put a little detail. So some of you have still not gone into developments and probably might not understand the language that I'm talking about, but I'll try to explain it in such a fashion that you being the future professionals and ready to get into the jobs pretty soon should be at least taking those smaller terms and maybe will take some takeaways with you while I talk about it. So let us start from this particular area, the model development in machine learning or AI systems or deep learning. We all know this is a very iterative process, and it is not, so any machine learning model or AI model is not going to get developed in one shot, whether it is in terms of the kind of data that we consume or the feature engineering that we do or testing that we are requiring or maybe cross validation that we had to do. So this is an iterative process, and what we want to propose is there should be a mechanism of tracking the whole progress of model development by using a model catalog. So this is twofold thing. One is that it gives me a full trace of the development process and allow me to track my progress. At the same time, in case of any failure, or assume that my resource who is a data science who was working to develop this particular model, but suddenly has left or maybe ill because of some certain reasons. Now, if I want to begin or shift that particular task to someone else, from where he or she has to begin and what was the history of the whole model development process would be easily made available to me using this model catalog. Similar is the case for the data catalog as well. So how I am churning my data from those big data systems and unstructured databases to convert it into some structured form, whether it is from the text, from machine, from images, whatever it is, whatever I'm doing with my data should have a data catalog ready for me to get consumption in the model development process. Now, this is about the standardization of MLOps cycle. Once I have done all of this development, there should be a mechanism, an automatic mechanism by which I am deploying my ML model, doing my loggings. All the logs should be made available to with me, the history available, whether it is a cloud or an on-prem production environment that I'm having it. In either case, I should have the deployment done in such a fashion that the whole process of deployment, which we are calling it as MLOps. So it was a simple DevOps. That is what development operations. Now it is machine learning operations that we should be taking care of. So this is about reproducibility so that I have a track of everything in my system and get back to any point in time stuff. Next is about transparency. So when I'm doing this model development, I deployed it and it is available. Some feedback that has to come back from my deployed model is coming back. And I have kept two things. I have kept some monitoring and matrices in place that are based on some of this AI committee suggestion, which is human in loop available, that they are creating for me a fairness reviews. Some of these matrices that are required to track my progress and the system drift are made available. And what are the policy decisions, which model to choose and which model not to take, what data to consider, etc., has been driven by an AI committee. Just to create the accountability in the system. And those metrics, whether it is simple classification error rate or anything else, App score, etc., I am going to monitor them. And what these two things are helping me? They are helping me with two concepts called as data drift and model drift, both, which is any deviation in the system that is arising due to changing environment or usage of the model in the practice. So when we have deployed this model here, there might be situation like COVID. Now, many things, just assume that the bank performance, if something was deployed and some credit risk scoring was available as a modeling thing. Now in the COVID situation, that model has to perform differently, right? So there would be some drift in the data that is coming in the model for the prediction purposes. And we need to take into account by using these two methods, monitoring and matrices. And then this last pillar that is available is about the explanation. There should be a metrics decided by the AI committee itself based on what model, what use case that we have, what is the kind of explanation required and should be kept while developing this system. So this is a very high level reference architecture that I'm showing, that one should use and follow for reproducibility, transparency, and accountability in the AI systems. Let us now. So these are some of more platform oriented available things. I'm not going to go much detail into it, but I'm flashing on the screen for you to know that this MLflow is an ML ops platform. Then there is a TensorBoard from TensorFlow things, Git repository, you all are aware. There is KuberFlow for all your Kubernetes requirement for containerization and standardizations of the deployment things. So we have converted, or rather broke, our machine learning platform into these 4 kinds of blocks we call data management, model lifecycle management, and production deployments, as I was explaining earlier. And the logos that are flashing on the screen are for you to take as a reference and take it forward. Now, next comes a federated AI thing. This is mainly to that I was talking about earlier, that it is for preserving your privacy in terms of the data and the usage that you have. This is a very good, nice framework. And some of the major platforms that are there available here are IBM's Federated Learning, PySIF, Fate, NVIDIA, Clara, and TensorFlow itself. I'm going to take a pause here and I'll explain what I am going to do here. Just give me a moment, please. What I'm saying here in this model, that there are 3 different parties, party 1, party 2, and party 3. Take example of your mobile phones. In your mobile phones earlier, initially when Gmail, or rather Google used to take all your photographs in the cloud and then create a big model out of it. And then that's how they generated their base models. But it has a serious problem in concern to our privacy, and we do not want to share the data. So what now people have found out, the data has not been shared with the party. So this is the aggregator who is the big, so assume this as in Google, and this is where the model is getting created. But what, instead of the data, a local trained model, okay, at the site of the party 1, local trained model at the site of party 2, similarly, as many as users that we have, and only the trained weights of these local models are coming in this aggregator function. And that is where they create a larger model or a global model based on all the inputs that are coming up from all 3 or maybe more places, and then create a global model. And that goes back as in weight and lies in our mobiles. And now you see we are able to get those organization in photographs or photo gallery without sharing our data. Why? Because this frequent app updates that come to our mobiles, they include those updated models. This is just one framework. The main use cases of this federated learning lies in healthcare systems and financial systems, because both the places data sharing by an industry person, like one bank would not like to share their data with another one, and they keep those secrecy or security in terms of privacy terms or whatever, and they do not want to share the data. But a common global model now can be created just by updating the weights of the model. Instead of sharing the whole data, just share model weights and get the whole global well-performing models at your usage. So this is about federated learning at a very high level, wherein the concept should be taken by you is, and this is a very current field and research right now. Let us move to confidential computation. So this is about security. Though I have my system as the data is private, it has not been shared, we have used federated learning. But what about my data security, right? Any cyber attacker can come and hack my machine or my network and get hold of my data or my identity or my passwords or anything else. So encryption is a very important stuff that has come into play. Though it is not new, people were using encryption from quite some time for coming up with this RSA kind of small machines that were used in financial systems for logging in based on random numbers. But now these encryptions are becoming more and more, thanks to the advancement of the storage and compute that is available to us. These techniques are now extended to machine learning models as well. So up till now, we had our databases stored in the form of encrypted data. The data was secured, but anything, since the data has to travel from the databases to the modeling devices where the actual model computation is happening, on-device computation is happening. What is the security in that machine when the model is getting developed? So the encryption, which is called as now full harmonic encryption, FHE, which is a current field of research, and this is currently with limited ML algorithms like simple linear regression and MLP kind of structures that is available. Again, there is a library called as IBM HELib, Microsoft Seed, and DARPA's Palisade. These are few platforms that you can go and experiment and contribute from the research perspective. This is an open field for research, and breakthrough is required here because it is still slows down our training process quite a bit when we try to use full homomorphic encryption on the development process. So I spoke about this 4 or 5 principles that that are there and how we are actually implementing it when we are developing this AI system for our customers. I'll talk a bit more about the explanation and interpretable AI here. So I gave sufficient examples. This is just another example to tell you that explanation is required. In this model, they had actually created a pneumonia prediction model and how much is the risk of death. What they found out, asthma is one of the feature. The model says asthma was not an important factor. It is, you can see that with no asthma, the risk of death was more. Okay. This is how the model was developing and the accuracy was very good. But the doctors had otherwise opinion, and the general understanding of the doctor says pneumonia with asthma is a deadly combinations. And why it was happening? It was happening because when this model was developed, the information was not complete. These patients who were actually having asthma were getting treated in some other hospitals for their asthma treatment. And hence, when this particular hospital recorded their data and used it for creating this model, it was not having a complete view. And that's how it got created. Though the accuracy levels were good, but some of the explainability factor, if it would have been there would have been success. So our AI, current AI systems, or I wouldn't say current because now many of it earlier, like when I was pursuing my PhD, I used, I created a paper on this black box, why the perceptron. So at my research time, I worked using neural network with the machine learning as a multi-layer perceptron architecture. There we had this concern that though the accuracy level of these neural networks are pretty good, but they are kind of black box. I don't get a explanation which feature is important, right? But now we have moved from that black box area to a much better thing. And here on this chart, what I'm trying to explain is on the x-axis you have explainability, and on y-axis you have performance, accuracy. So the models like decision tree and ensemble methods, random forest, which are more of statistical model based on some of these standard functions which are linear and some of it non-linear, but defined non-linear functions. They have a much better explanation as compared to some of these deep learning models, which are highly non-linear. They are black box, though they are very good in terms of accuracy, but in terms of explanation, they are not so good. What we want both. So we want accuracy as well as explanation on top of it. So earlier systems, what we had is a database, then there was a machine learning coming up into place. You create your model, you deploy, the user is happy. But I didn't have answers to why did the AI do that? Why not something else? When did the AI succeed? When it is going to fail? How do I trust this system? And how can I correct error? Because I didn't have explanation of those. But with this explanation interface in place, now I am able to explain more about my things. I just created a quick slide on where are we in terms of AI libraries and what kind of explainable techniques that are available. They could be model specific, they could be model agnostic. So there are both kinds of things. Few algorithms are working wherein it doesn't matter which algorithm are you using, but some of these developed things like SHAP, LINE, PDP, they are model agnostic. So you can use them for the use case specific things. So whether the data is text data or a image data or a structured data. Based on that, you can use which particular libraries are being used. It could be a local versus global model. And this XAI is a short form for explainable AI. This is another research area, but a bit more advanced in terms of its implementation stages and availability of various open source tools and things that we can use. This AIX 360 is a IBM's product. So I have listed down who are the big players in the market just below here. Google has come up with this What If tool, Microsoft with Interpret ML, IBM's AIX 360 degree. Amazon has this SageMaker debugger that we can use for our models to make explanation available. H2O.ai has driverless AI, which is like an automated auto ML thing. Then there are one or two more classification on which these techniques differ. One is whether it is interpretable or explainable, like once the model is created, now you are able to explain only the features, or are you able to create the whole process end to end? Similarly, a deep learning model explanation is a bit different than a shallow learning. And based on that, some of these tools that I've highlighted in orange colors are made available, and we can make use of these tools to explain the model process as much as possible. Let me show you a few quick examples that we in our lab has used. This is one in BFSI sector that we were able to do a simple correlation kind of a thing, whether the particular variable or a feature is contributing high or low, and whether it is on the negative side or it is on the positive side is what coming up in this graph. Similarly, here it is in bar graph based. So these things you get even in your random forest model, right? In random forest, based on those Gini index, you get such a explanation of the things. And here we have used the library called as LE5 and PDP to come up with this. This is from the LE5 and this is from the PDP, which are the particular features that are written here, blood pressure and skin thickness, etc., are important. This is a case of prediction of diabetes in healthcare. And there is another example in case of image processing. It is working on the attention mechanism. It tells, so this is a little difficult image basically to understand based on the malaria cell. So we won't be able to understand much, but what it says, the color is getting highlighted in the red and the green based on what particular area of an X-ray image or in cell microorganism image that the decision is taken on. So if they have classified it, whether it is a parasite or malaria is there or not. So based on that, those particular cell positions are going to get highlighted to add value to us. Let me quickly demo you a slide, a small demo that I have kept. This is one of my team members. This is available on YouTube. I'm just playing this demo to quickly show how it was used in the
model. What we need is training data and train model. We can generate explanation for any of the data category. It can be a numeric, text or image. Let's pick image category and object detection and classification model. We are using CNN model, which is trained on ImageNet dataset, which is VGC16, and we feed this image to that model. Along with the prediction, we generate explanations using various explainable AI techniques. So in the explanation, you can see green pixels are highlighted, which are the pixels of zebra. So by using another method also we can generate explanation. So it shows our output prediction is zebra, and the pixels highlighted in green are the pixels of that particular class. Here is one more method. It shows explanations with different formats. This is how explainability can be a mediator between AI and society. It is also a useful tool for identifying issues in the ML model.
So with this, I would like to thank you and acknowledge at the same time my team at Research Lab in Persistent for some of the active research and understanding that we create in the latest trends of AI and machine learning. And I'm open for any questions that you might have now for me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mukta. Himani, do we have questions in chat?